Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Outside of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva, and my guest today is a film and story artist originally from East LA, now living in San Francisco, California. He has been an artist within animation industry for over 19 years, and he is currently working remotely as a visual development and story artist at Sony Pictures Animation in California. He created designs for Pixar animated feature films such as Inside Out, Monsters University, and Cars 2. He also worked for Rovio Animation on Angry Birds movie and provided design work for Google Spotlight series Pearl. We met when I was working for Lego, and he came to Denmark to teach at Viborg Animation School. I asked him if he would do a workshop in Lego too, and he accepted. It was a great inspiration to talk with him about his many years of experience in different studios, like being storyboard artist at Walt Disney, sketch artist at Pixar, or art director at Ken Duken Studios and others. He is currently working on finalizing his personal book project, Sony the Cat, that he wants to release shortly before CTN Expo in November 2017. So please welcome John Nevarez, and let's get to the interview. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Outside of Life. I'm super excited to have John here, so please welcome.
Well, thank you, Eva. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. This is. I'm honored and flattered to be part of it. Thank you.
Oh, me. I'm so happy that you are here because we saw each other last time. It was almost, half a year or 9 months, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, it was 9 months. And just to let people know, I think I first met you. Well, first of all, on Facebook, but then I had the great opportunity. When you were working at Lego, you were so kind to bring me over so I could talk to the Lego concept team and the art team, and that was awesome. And thank you so much. That was a great opportunity, and I just loved it. It was the highlight of the trip.
Oh,
Thank
super
you.
nice, because everyone was super excited at Lego as well. When I said you will come, everyone was like, what? Oh, that's so cool. So I think it was win-win. Everyone was happy, so.
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, I love Lego, and then when I left, I was like, I love Lego so much more. I had no idea what you guys did, and I so appreciate. I left with so much more appreciation and for what they do and what they are, and it was awesome.
There's so many nice people. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
you were teaching at the school as well in Viborg in animation, and now you're teaching in many different places as well, also with schoolism, right?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough. Yeah, I started with the animation workshop, and it was great. And then I've been lucky enough to be asked and invited to other schools, like the Nemo Academy in Italy, and the One Academy in Malaysia and other places. And I love it. I didn't think I'd be traveling and teaching, but it happened, and I love it. I just love doing it. So it's great.
That's super nice, because you are the super nice guy, and I think everyone is super happy to have you all the time, and so it's really good inspiration. And and let's maybe start with your background, how you grew up. And I heard this super cool question from Solopreneur podcast. How did your childhood smelled like?
How did my childhood
smelled like?
Smell like? Oh, let's see. I guess it smelled like good food, I had a childhood where I grew up in East LA. I was actually born and raised in East LA, and I was there. I'll give you the very short version. I lived in East LA, and then right around when I was about 7 years old, my mom took me and my sister to live with my grandmother in Central California, and it was in Tulare. And it was kind of it wasn't a farming town, but it was a farming town, small town. It was just very, very small, but everybody knew each other, and it was great. We were there for 3 years, and then we went back to East LA, and that was an adjustment. It was kind of it was tough coming back, but I loved it. It was, as far as smells, It's kind of, if I was in the city, it smelled like cars, I guess, because of the gas. And then when I was in Tulare, it smelled like cows, because right across the street was the dairy. So we had cows and everything, but I loved it. It always reminds me of going back in my childhood to my grandmother's house.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Oh, that's
so,
perfect. Yeah.
so
Because
I mean,
you
yeah,
kind of remember these things, and yeah, I remember like a river and river mud because we used to go for kayak trips, so that's kind of
yeah,
like that's what I remember.
yeah. It's like you're wondering, like, well, I wish it was something more romantic, but that's all I can remember. Yeah.
And which were kind of like your biggest decisions and kind of turning points when you decided that you want to take the art seriously?
It was late for me. I decided to take art seriously after I got kicked out of college. I originally went to college at UC Santa Barbara as a math major,
Hmm.
and I took math because I thought it was a safe job. I thought it would be a safe direction that I would get, comfortable money and make a good living. And I realized I didn't like math. I hated math, and I got kicked out of school. So I went to a junior college, and I started taking art to make me happy. And then I realized, oh, maybe I should do art. So I had enough credits. After I got kicked out, I went to a junior college for 3 years, and I went back to the same school that kicked me out, and then I graduated as an art major. And it was that me getting kicked out of school and then and that time trying to figure out what I want to do. And I realized I was miserable. So I wanted to be happy. And I was trying to find out what made me happy. And that, and then when animation started getting popular, then this was like around the time of the Lion King came out,
Hmm.
that I made the connection like, oh, maybe I should do that. So it wasn't fast. I didn't immediately do it. It took me a long time to do it, to get into animation, but at least I kind of thought like, wow, maybe I can do that. So to answer the question, I guess getting kicked out, I never really, I didn't really consider art as an automatic. It took
Hmm.
me a long time to realize that you need to be happy doing something. So this was like when I was 25 that I kind of made that choice or that decision.
And what was your fascination like in art, or kind of what kind of like dragged you to it? Was it a story or designing stuff or colors?
It was. I remember. The Art of the Lion King book.
Hmm.
I would look at that a lot every day. I would look at it, and it was the rough drawings. It was the storyboards and the very rough drawings that they would use when they were trying to explore character designs or the environments. That's what excited me. I always thought, and this is very naive of me. I always thought before then that animation was very a fine line. It was perfect and everything, and I appreciated that. But I was thought, oh, I can't do that. But when I saw the art book, you see all this beautiful loose drawings, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this energy and just people just passionately throwing pencils down, and it wasn't like they were perfect drawings. They were just lively drawings that just really connected to me, and I just loved how they were fearless. They just threw it down, and those sketches really made an impact. And I remember who would draw them. Oh, that's let's see, that would be Tom Enriquez, or that would be Andy Gaskell, or that'd be Paul Felix, or all these artists. I started memorizing them, and I just like, wow, that it was like the light bulb went off. I'm like, this is brand new. I saw things like, this is so cool. I want to do that. So
And
I remember that vividly.
did you have a mentor or someone who kind of introduced you to these like loose lines and storytelling?
At the moment, not really. I do remember when I started the industry that there were some people that they didn't know it yet, but I always considered them my mentors. But I mean, I could answer that now, or I could answer that maybe later. But at the moment, no. I don't really remember anyone, who was quite a mentor at that time. But I do remember when I started the industry, a few people were they made an impact on me.
And
Yeah.
so, and after the college or during the college time, what was the first thing you did after you finished college and wanted to go into industry?
Let's see. Well, I finished college, and I wanted to get into the industry, but nobody knew me, and nobody hired me, it was hard for me to get in. So it took me about, I say almost like 2.5, 3 years of me knocking on doors, submitting portfolios. And I remember I had a stack of rejection letters. I had like close to 24 rejection letters.
Wow.
And I just kept trying and trying. I mean, I should have stopped, but I didn't. I didn't know any better. I was kind of naive. I was dumb. I just kept applying. And it was, I got to know the operators, the switchboard operators of all the studios. I got to know them. It was weird. And then this one lady, the operator from Walt Disney TV Animation,
Mm-hmm.
she just told me, and this was like after 2 years, or she said, "Have you heard of this program, the training program?" And I'm like, "No." And she told me what it was. She sent me information. Basically, in a nutshell, it was like a year-long program where they taught you, it was like art school and film school, and they taught you about storyboarding for animation. And I was like, wow, great. So I applied, and it took almost 9 months or a year to get in, and I got in. And that was the thing that opened the door. It was basically a program for people who had no experience, but they had raw skills that they could hopefully help develop. And then after the year program, they would hire them knowing that they had all these skills, and that way, they trained them to be on the job. So that was my first job. And what happened was, there's another part of the story where I started the program, and then 3 months after, the program quit, like it stopped. They didn't have any money to fund it. So, but somehow I was kept on.
But that's really, and how do you think like they choose people even back then and now? What is the thing you kind of make you kind of choose the artist? Like, what is the thing which stands out?
I'm not really sure. I think they were looking for people who didn't know how to draw, who had a basic understanding of drawing. But I think more. I remember they gave me a storyboard test, so they wanted to know if people had a kind of an understanding of how to approach story. Even though they were going to train him to do storyboard, I think they wanted to know, well, would you be interested in doing it? Do you have some kind of interest to learn more about it? So I remember I pretty much just had my life drawings. That was the only thing I had. I didn't have like character designs or anything. I just had life drawings. So I think they were looking for people who had like a really quick gestural way of drawing, and who they could use to help maybe introduce, how can they use that gestural drawing to storyboards? So that's I think that's how that would be, that's how I think they would choose people. It could be differently, but I know we were all pretty, we all had a gestural way of drawing.
Yeah, and when you think now, after so many years in the industry, and if you look at young people's portfolios, when they want to apply, what would you consider like this is a good portfolio or a good kind of range of artworks? Like, what do you look for?
I like people who draw loose, who have energy, who have a good knowledge of shapes. If you're a character designer, it's like you have a good knowledge of shapes. You can actually build and construct things and then design around it. Things aren't so perfect. There's a sense of construction, and then there's a sense of movement. And more importantly, you can make things act. You can have them perform, and you can get feelings, and, you can play with eyebrows and shoulders and really get things acting, because these are performers. So somebody who can do that with their drawings, that's kind of what I think that's what makes a response to them. And the same thing with sets. It's like, can you design spaces or theaters, little mini theaters that people can come in and out of space? And can you use lighting to kind of give a sense of mood and emotion? Oh, this is a scary place. Well, why is it scary? Oh, because there's dark shadows, or you can't see things, or stuff like that. You're trying to give a feeling. It's like, it's like you have good. You can draw it, you can design it, but then you also give emotion behind that, and you do it with your lighting or your sense of composition and stuff like that. So, I think for people, it's like, think in terms of that. It's like, you just don't draw pretty pictures. That helps, but I think you want to think in terms of, why are you doing this? You're creating, design sets that for a certain moment. So you have to like, well, how do you design it for that moment? Oh, this is a happy moment. Well, why, what makes it happy and what makes it sad? So, and I tell people too, a lot of people go to art school and then they want to film in animation. And I tell people, well, you know what really helps is if you come in with a more film studies background. So that doesn't mean necessarily go to film school. It means start looking at film. Start looking at documentaries, foreign films, films from 80 years ago. Look at films. I mean, a lot of people I talk to are like 20 years old, 30 years old. And I'm like, you guys are babies. You guys got to look at, there's like 90 years of film you haven't seen yet. Look at films before CGI because they had to creatively make things happen. They couldn't rely on special effects. They had to give a sense of suspense. They had to be creative with their camera. So, oh, there's a monster around the corner. Well, they could have shown the monster or they could have implied that something was there. So they built some suspense. Well, how do they do that? Maybe they show things at a certain point to build, suspense. And then they, boom, revealed it. Or maybe they didn't and they saved it for later. So it's how, I guess, just telling students, look at film because eventually, animation is film. And you want to start looking at what filmmakers do. Look at the choices that they made. Look at why did they choose to light it or design it that way? It's probably because to underscore that moment, that feeling in that scene. So, yeah, I just tell people to look at film.
No.
Yeah.
And so do you have like a favorite movies you would recommend people to see? Because I see often on your Facebook that you share some of the layouts or light. What do you like?
God, there's like a lot. I have a lot of movies to recommend. It's I know some people have these lists and so forth. There's a lot. I mean, the movies that I kind of offhand that I like are like Godfather, Chinatown, Shawshank Redemption. I like cinematographers, so I like looking at movies that have Roger Deakins in them.
Mm-hmm.
I like a lot of the John Alonzo and all these other cinematographers. I love how they like light things. So I'm actually looking at movies as far as like from cinematography stands, but also look at like old Hitchcock movies. Look at movies from the young directors from the 70s. They were very gritty. They didn't have a lot of big budgets, so they were very economic in how they filmed. So I don't really have specific films. I just tell people there's so many films. Look at different genres and periods, and there's so many. Give yourself an experience and just start looking at films and start exploring different directors. And I mean, if I had a chance, I think what I might do is, I could create like a starter list. But gosh, there's so much great films. There's films that are done in America, but so many all around the world, and not just now. Great films from the 40s and 50s and 60s, and foreign films, animated films, documentaries. There's a lot, and I need to create a list. I should create a list.
I think it would be really cool.
Here I am blabbing. It's like, well, maybe I should start giving you names, but yeah. So, yeah.
And did some of these movies influence you in the works, like when you worked on the Monsters or the Cars or something like this?
Kind of, yeah. Well, I know, like when I worked on Monsters University, they were referencing other films to try and get the either the look or the feeling. Like I remember we looked a little bit like at Animal House. Because it had to do with fraternities. I remember we were looking at there's a movie called Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. It's pretty much this movie. It's a movie in the 80s. It's a comedy and it's funny. It's kind of silly too. But I remember there's a moment when Rodney Dangerfield decides he's a very rich man. He deals with clothing for larger people. He's very successful, and he has a son in college, and he tells his son, I'm going to go visit you. So there's a montage where he's traveling from the city to the university. And, he's right there looking out the window, and he sees the campus, and there's moments where you see students it's like the beginning of school. They're excited. You see the trees reveal buildings and campuses and posters. It's lively. It's like the beginning of school. Mm-hmm. That whole scene we used as inspiration when Mike was entering Monsters University. And we were trying to capture, or at least kind of get inspired by the excitement that he had by entering this world. This was his dream. And so we looked at that for inspiration. So we kind of like tapped into like, well, what makes it so exciting? It's like it's a slow reveal, and you're like, wow. And we kind of use that, not directly, but we use it as inspiration. So that was just one example, but there's a lot of examples. Mm-hmm. You kind of see what people did, and then you kind of try and get something out of it. You kind of want to channel some kind of spark or inspiration or like feeling and that. But yeah, we're always doing that.
And do you also go like on field trips when you went for maybe to check out the universities and how it looks like and sketch somewhere there, or maybe in cafes or?
We did. Well, I remember we went to Cal Berkeley, which it wasn't too far from the Pixar campus. It was probably, I guess, less than maybe 4 or 5 miles. So it was right there. It was in our backyard. So we went to go there. I remember the part of the art team and the story team, they went to go to the Ivy League school. So they went to Harvard and Yale, and they took a lot of pictures. So they took like thousands of pictures and they brought it back for us. So we use that as reference too. But yeah, for me, it was so easy to go to Cal. I went there and I would just walk through and I would feel. I took lots of pictures. I would sketch there. And you just want to say, you want to be like a student. So you're like, well, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What do you smell? And so forth. But it's great. It's a great thing. I mean, Pixar is great where they encourage people, if they can, to go on location. Like for Ratatouille, they had people go to Paris for a couple of weeks. For Nemo, they had people learn scuba diving and they have them go underwater and experience that. So it does help when you actually try and visit places that mimic or are actually going to be the places you're going to design, because you're on location, you're on the movie set, so you're seeing, you're smelling, you're feeling, and that's, as a designer, you have to capture that in your design. So it just brings you closer to that connection. So yeah.
Yeah, or like going to sewers for Ratatouille, right? As you mentioned.
Or sewers too, yeah. You really got to get in there. You got to and that's what they did. So yeah, it just makes it more authentic. It makes it more real. You're bringing that to life.
And what about some projects you are working on now? Something maybe you can share already, or something you worked on recently?
Let's see. Well, about a year. Well, currently I'm at Sony Pictures Animation. It's great, and I'm working on different projects. I worked a little bit on the Emoji Movie, doing story, and there's a few other movies there. Unfortunately, I can't say what they are, but I would bounce from design and story, so it was really great, where I was just kind of pinballing between projects and doing different things. And I love that, because you get to work with different people and different directors, and you're just kind of changing up style and genre and so forth. Before Sony, a year ago, I was at Rovio, and I worked on the Angry Birds movie with Pete Oswald, and that was awesome. Working with Pete was so great, and all the artists there were awesome as well. And then after that, I worked a little bit with Google on the Pearl show. It was a VR short, and that was awesome too, because I got to learn a little bit about VR and just working differently with what the needs were for VR. But it was a great team. It was a great story, and working with Patrick Osborne and all the folks there was just awesome.
Wow, yeah, because you have so much experience from so many different fields. And so how do you do your networking, or how do you get yourself noticed, or the connections, what you do?
Well, it helps doing this very long that, you kind of migrate. So when you work with studios, you're there for a while, then you move on, and so do other people. So they always kind of remember you and fortunately, you keep in contact. So you always call them, they always call you. So that helps. Kind of just keep working. But someone who may not be known or who's kind of new to the industry, I just tell people you have to be on people's radar. What basically means you have to start generating artwork, and hopefully great, strong, impressive artwork, and put it on your social media, on your Facebook. You somehow have to be on people's radar. And you have to somehow tell people that you're available or that you're willing to do this and that. And eventually it will get a response. It may not be immediate, but you just kind of like, that's how you do it. It worked for me where blogs really help. When blogs happened almost 10 years ago or longer than that, as soon as I put my artwork on the blogs, I was getting contacted by certain studios or certain art directors and so forth. And it still happens. I would post my stuff up on Facebook. And, fortunately, the circle of people looking at my work would get bigger, or it would generate traffic or inquiries like, oh, I saw this and that. So take advantage of social media. But you just, yourself as an artist, you have to keep pumping artwork and keep pumping fresh artwork and start doing stuff that would showcase your abilities, but what else can you do? And, that's how I just tell students, you just got to keep generating artwork.
So would you advise maybe something as well, like maybe imaging their own world and creating their own stories?
Yes. Creating their own worlds and the story. Pretend like you already have the job. That's what I tell people. Pretend you're already working at Pixar. Pretend you're already working at DreamWorks. And this is what Pixar or DreamWorks would tell you to do. If you're a character designer, just don't do one character. Do a lineup, because that's what you're required to do. Oh, I have this one little girl. And I said, great. Well, what about her? What's her story? So first of all, you want to say like, well, what's her backstory? What about this girl is so special? So if you haven't figured it out, you may want to start doing it. Like, oh, well, here's a little girl. She lives in New York and she's 12 years old. Okay. Where is she from? Does she have a family? Is she rich? Is she poor? What are her likes? What are her dislikes? Does she have any weaknesses, any fears? You're basically now creating a profile. So it's like, great. That's what you do as a character designer. You create a profile. And then you're like, okay, well, draw her friends. Who's her best friend? Does she have a pet? Draw her pet. Does she have parents that she's close to that you can envision in the story? Draw her mom, draw her dad. Or if they're not in the picture, draw someone who she trusts. Maybe it could be a grandfather or a teacher. Draw them. Okay, now draw maybe someone who is maybe the antagonist, or it could be not her enemy, but in this case it wouldn't be her enemy. Maybe she does have an enemy, but someone who may not be so nice to her, so forth. And that's just taken for a little girl. If it's a warrior, it's like, okay, what about your warrior? Is he a hero? Okay, cool. Oh, he has a scar. Maybe he got a scar from war, and that's very significant to his backstory. Okay, then draw the people in his group. Like draw 5 people in his group, 5 warriors. Oh, does he have a horse? Draw his horse. Okay, who's the villain? Draw the villain. Draw the villain's goonmen and draw the creature. Are there dragons? Draw dragons and so forth. Expand the world and the universe of what you're doing. Just don't do one. Do the lineup. And then after you do that, do expressions, do poses, make these people act and perform. That is what you're being asked to do at Pixar and Disney and all these other studios. They want people to just bring options to their characters. They don't want stiff characters. They want people acting and lively and moving. And it's like, oh, this is a person in this suit. We'll change the suit. Instead of nice clothes, now they're in dirty clothes because the story takes them to a dirty area. Okay, do that. Maybe they have soot or dirt, or maybe they're in water. Well, how do they look like with wet hair? All this stuff, do it. Do your research and do it. And you're going to do a lot of drawings. It's not an automatic. It's not perfect, and it's not pretty sometimes. It's getting strong ideas, doing your research, explorations, studies, and then you build up the drawing. And then you showcase your strong drawings with options and so forth. You do the same thing with the sets. You do the same thing with storyboards. You just kind of you just do it. and you just try and you try and put kind of a story behind it, because that's what animation is. Animation is story, and it's, you want to try and find out what the story is, because you're designing for the needs of the story.
Yeah, because as well as you mentioned, like the small girl, then you can already imagine like her room, like if she has a diary, what flower she has in the room, and so the room can tell more about her as well, right?
Exactly. The room has her DNA. It's like you can take the girl out of the room, but the room itself, we kind of know what kind of person she is. I always tell people, it's like if somebody walked into your bedroom, we kind of have an idea what kind of person you are. First of all, we can kind of tell if you're a neat or a very cluttered person or a messy person. We can probably tell what you like, what you don't like, what kind of clothes you wear, or if you're very manicured, or if you're very stylish, or if you're very casual and you like the outdoors. We might know what kind of music you like, what kind of movies you like, based on the posters or the books, or whatever's in there. If we see a lot of outdoor gear, oh, you're an outdoor person. You like sports. You're very active. If there's nothing in the room and it's very bare and empty, well, you could be either poor, or you're very introverted, or you're just a very lonely person. We don't know yet, but you're kind of giving clues and suggestions, and all that stuff helps build profiles and an insight as to what these characters are in the movie.
Yeah,
So,
and then when you have like this set, for example, let's take the room as we are there. How would you translate it in your storyboards, like in a like sad moment and scary moment, or how you work with colors, if you can like explain to people?
Yeah, I mean, for the story, a storyboard is pretty much, it's a beginning and a middle and an end of someone going through a journey. And, the beginning of the story is an opening snapshot of someone in this moment of their life. And then usually something happens, it's usually something not so good. And that person, he or she, has to try and get their story back, or they want to get their world back. It could be epic, where like, oh, well, it's the end of the world and I have to try and save the world from maybe a volcano or this dragon or a bad guy. Or it could be like, well, I was at a party and I looked across the room and I saw this beautiful woman, and oh my gosh, I want to meet her. And then she leaves. So maybe my story is I need to find that woman. And maybe I do, and then it's more of a love story. Like, do we make it work? Do we make it not work? That's what mostly love stories are. The love story is, well, do they end up getting together or not? For a crime story, a detective has to there's a crime, and then enters the detective, and the detective has to solve the crime. That's the story. Does he solve it? Does he find the bad guy? Monster movies, big monster comes. It's the same thing. There's usually a hero that has to save the monster, or stuff like that. There's a structure to it, and usually, there's an introduction of someone's world. Something happens, usually something not that they want, or something major rocks their world, and then the whole story is someone trying to get the world back. And they have this structure. Pixar has introduced it, and other studios as well, where there's usually an introduction, there's an inciting incident, and then there's progressive complications. Mm-hmm. Progressive complications are just a way of saying when things get harder for someone to get what they want back. So it's, it gets harder and harder and harder, and then there's a climax. It's the big battle. It's the big moment where it's the moment of truth. Does that person get their world back? And we don't know. And then maybe they do, maybe they don't. And then after that is the epilogue or the resolution. It's the New World Order. It's like, well, what happened after that? And then the movie ends. So there's this buildup. So I want, people should kind of recognize there's this kind of this the structure where you have a beginning and then things happen and progress. Mm-hmm. Now, having said all that, your job as a designer is to how do you show that visually? You use it with composition, you use it with lighting, you use it with acting, because you're creating emotion. You're creating, what they call intensity. You're creating things that kind of build up, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So basically, things are pretty much with your lighting, things are very lit. Maybe they're lit very well, and maybe it's a sunny day. and then maybe something happens. And when something happens, maybe you're using very harsh colors. Contrast. There's large contrast. Contrast is important. For me to say something very happy, it helps when I contrast it with something very sad because it builds up the happy. So, you can use color, and when you have color spiking and contrast. Usually with sad movies, they take out the color and things are very gray and drab, and that's a way of using color to underscore moments of sadness or just apathy, or just things are just drained and zapped of life. Things that are intense, bright reds, garish greens, that things aren't so right. Usually, things that have a scary villain or some icky moment, a feeling of just kind of things aren't right. There's a sick green or some kind of pale green or something. Things that are beautiful days, there's usually a hint of a sunrise, because sunrise are metaphor for, it's a new day, it's a new opportunity, it's a new chance, a new beginning, and so forth. Same thing with sunsets. Sunsets, it's the closing of the day. Things are kind of coming to an end, and so forth. You're using metaphors, visual metaphors, to kind of showcase what you're trying to say visually.
Yeah. Because you also work with shapes, right? When you have like happy moment, you have round shapes and sharp objects for like scary areas and stuff.
Exactly. It's like a good example of that is Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph is a great movie because there's 3 worlds in that movie. There's the Icelanders, which are very square, and the square represents old technology. They move up and down. It's very boring. They're just kind of trapped in this square. And then there's Heroes. Is it Heroes Duty? It's the second world where they have the insects. Very aggressive, very warlike. So things have a very sharp, angular, aggressive nature. And even the color is very
green, I think.
Warlike, almost apocalyptic, green, grays. And then you have Sugar Rush. Very flowery, soft, and then the shapes are very soft and lush. They're like picture clouds, picture swirls, very soft, cottony. So you have contrast of these 3 worlds, and right away you can contrast the worlds and their emotion or their mood. So and then again, that's just a very simple way of how do you how can you use shape to really distinguish worlds or a feeling.
Yeah, but it's perfect example actually.
Yeah, so it's great.
And so when you worked in so many projects and teams, how do you decide what to say yes and no to? Kind of what is going on in your head? Like, what is your decision point?
When I work on a team?
Or like when you are choosing new projects to work on?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I'll be frank. Usually when I choose a project, it's usually, when an opportunity for a job or a freelance happens to me, for me, I'll be quite honest. I'm basically looking for something that pays well. And the reason I say that is because I have a family and I need to make sure I support them. But I also want to ask, what's this project about? Is it juicy? Is it something that interests me? Because it's great when something pays well, but if it's not a good project sometimes, it's like, you have to keep finding the love. You have to keep finding interest, because in the end, it reflects what you do with it. Mm-hmm. So ideally, when I look at a project, for me, I try and find something that, aside from the money, I'm just being honest, but something that you can bring to it. Like, is it something that's, I always use the word, it's juicy. It's something that interests you. It's something like, wow, it sounds cool. I think you can envision doing more to it or adding to it. So I always try and find things that are kind of, that I can add to it. It's great too when I try and find things I've never done before, because they challenge you. It's scary, but it really builds you as a designer. Yeah. I've had opportunities where I did do things, didn't think I would do it, and it was tough, but in the end, it made you a stronger designer, because you had to relearn things again. You had to figure out how to, based on the story or whatever, how to make things work visually. So, but it's great. I mean, For me, I just try and find something that's interesting that I can really dive in and hopefully contribute to the team.
Yeah, and when you mentioned as well like decisions in the team, maybe you can as well like mention that.
Yeah, with the team. Yeah, I mean, working with the team. You mean like in terms of like working with the crew and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's funny because right now I work from home. I mean, this is kind of where I work. I mean, I have my Cintiq here and I have the iMac here and I have my pads of paper. So right now I work alone. So I work at home. I start my day at 9 in the morning and I try and stop like by 6 or 7. Sometimes it creeps over, but I work alone. I do really miss working at a studio. At the studio, I love the studio because you work with people and there's an energy there. I love working and contacting and sharing and together you're kind of you're in the trenches trying to figure things out together. And I encourage, I always tell people when they're young, try and get a studio job and that way you can interact and make a connection, a camaraderie with fellow people that you're kind of working together on this vision. And together, you just learn how other people work. You learn how the studio works. That's important, growing as a designer. Later on, you can choose to do freelance, but you should try and get that opportunity to work in a studio if you can.
Yeah.
It's really, I think it's important. It's very beneficial. And not to mention, you get to build contacts, and later on, that's how you get jobs to come in. So,
yeah, and also when you are older, then it will be maybe a bit harder to adjust to a studio life if you start with freelance.
It can be. It's not impossible. It's just kind of like you just have to studios move fast, so things move so quickly. So you just have to realize that. It's not like you can kick back and stuff. No, you just have to, just like anything else, they've got deadlines. It's like Project Runway every day. It's like you just got to move fast,
Right.
Yeah, go do it, run.
And and now how is it the life balance or work-life balance better than you were like full-time in a studio when you are sitting there, and now when you are like remote, can you spend more time with your family, or how is the balance working?
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I didn't love it at first. When I was at Pixar, I was laid off at Pixar, and it was tough because I was like, oh, okay, there's not many opportunities up here outside of Pixar and ILM. So I was thinking like me and my wife would probably have to move back to LA because that's where we're from, and it'd be more easier to do that. But we gave freelance a go, and it was really tough because I wasn't used to that. Managing your own time, self-discipline, working alone, that was tough. But after a while, the more I did it, the more I loved it. And nothing really changed. I still do what I did at the studios, but I do it at home and I do it alone. But the payoff was, I set my own schedule. I have more time with my family. It opened up a little more time to do my own projects. It's great. I love it. And I tell people there's opportunities out there. I didn't think there were, but a lot of studios now are more open to people working remotely, freelance. Mm-hmm. It really helps when you're established or when people know you because there's a sense of trust. They can trust you, like, oh, you've done it before, so if we give a project to you, that you can deliver on time and at a standard. So that does help. But it's great. I tell myself if I went back to a studio, would I like it? I don't know. I know I would love working for the team, but I love this too. It's really, there's some great advantages. And for me personally, I love it.
And how are your personal projects going? Because you mentioned previously that you were working on something. How is that coming out? Or maybe when can we see it?
Yeah, I'm working on a book. It's about my cat. I have a cat character named Sunny. And it's just something I've been kind of working for a long time. And just recently, I'm trying to get this book out for CTN, the CTN Expo in Burbank. So that's coming up in 3 months. But I'm actually going to try and finish in 2 months because I'll be traveling in the beginning of October, so I won't have a chance to work on it. So it's coming slowly but surely. I'll be quite honest. I originally had plans to do an 80-page book. But as time goes by, that 80 pages turns to 60 pages. and it's a 40. So right now I'm working at something like, I'll be happy if I do like a 20-page book, but that's okay. If I miss the CTN deadline, I'm still going to work on my book, but I'll just work on prints. It's a slow thing because you have your day gig and then you try and find the time to do this, your personal project. So it's like a balance. So it's going a little slower than I want, but I just got to keep moving forward. And, I now have a story I want to tell. So now it's like, I need to tell it. So I'm hoping, at the very least, I'll have prints, I'll have sketches and drawings. And I'm actually talking to some good folks like Christopher Wright and a few others about creating maquettes. So hopefully I'll have some maquettes as well.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So that's something it's starting to build up slowly, but it's building up.
So people can check it out. You will be selling it with a stand on CTN and then maybe signing the book as well if it's ready.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, my dream is to have something on my hand that I can hold on and give to you. But we'll see. If I don't have the book by then, I'm going to shoot for like maybe in March. But at the very least, I'll try and have pages that I can make into prints of this cat.
And will you do it through Kickstarter, or you found your own publisher, or how do you do it?
Well, I have great friends of mine from the Nemo Academy. They're going to help me print. So I'm actually working with them, and they're great. I did my first book with them, and I'm going to do it with them again. So they're great. They did such a great job, and so they're going to help me.
Perfect. And where can people see you next time? So you mentioned CTN, and then you are going to Florence, right?
Yes, going to Florence. I'm actually, in September, at the end of September, I'll be in Pennsylvania. There's a Comic-Con there, so I'll be there for the weekend. And then in October 14th and 15th, I'll be in Copenhagen for a schoolism workshop, which should be great. And then October 25th through November 5th, I'll be in Florence, and I'll be with the Nemo Academy. Those are the folks who are going to help me in my book. I love those guys. They're great people, and they're they're just great friends. I'll be doing a workshop with them, and I'll also be in Lucca, the Lucca Comics Festival. Mm-hmm. I think it's in end of October. I'll be there, and then I'll be at CTN.
Yeah, so you have a lot of stuff to do.
A lot of stuff to do too. Yeah. Oh, and also I'll be in. Where is it at? I'll be at the Emerald Comic-Con, I believe in March. That's in Seattle, or is it Portland? I feel bad because I don't know. I'll be in Emerald Con, and then I'll be in Paris in March. In mid-March, I'll be in Paris.
Oh yeah, good. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, like, when do you actually work?
I know. I should be working now, but
I know. I mean, like, it's magic.
But it's hard to say no to these opportunities because it's an opportunity to travel, but to meet great people. And this is one thing I noticed: traveling. Everybody. I mean, we all love the same thing. We all love to draw. We all love to geek out at the same thing. We're all fans of the same thing. So it's just it's a universal brotherhood, sisterhood of people just like me, and I want to keep connecting with them. So yeah.
And what is maybe the thing you wish you knew before you started the whole art career?
I wish I took film studies. I actually wish I did maybe took film more seriously, or maybe I could have maybe gone to film school. I really appreciate editing now, because editing is like storyboarding. Mm-hmm. So I really wish I kind of knew a little more about film before this, but that's okay. I learned it later, but I think now I appreciate it, and like, wow, it's funny because early on when I was in high school, people say like they mentioned film studies, but I didn't know what film studies was. I was so naive. I didn't bother to think more about it, but I wish I did. And I just encourage people like, you don't necessarily have to go to film school. It's nice, but start looking at films, because it's the same thing you're going to eventually do.
And what do you think was like the best advice and maybe the worst advice you ever received?
The best advice. I think just never quit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you never want to quit. You always want to just keep trying. You know, things happen, you know, but sometimes they may not happen immediately. But what's important is that you keep trying. You know, I think I learned that from my mom and dad. It's like, you know, my mom was always, she saw me, you know, after I got kicked out of school, uh, you know, I went home ashamed. I felt like a loser, failure. And she was always kind of cheering me up, saying like, you know, just, it'll be okay. I mean, she wasn't upset. She was like, oh, it's all right. Just keep going. She kind of knew I wasn't happy at my spot, but I didn't know where I wanted to go. But she was the one who always said, just keep going. You know, she had hard times too, but you realize you just got to keep going. I'm trying to think of the worst advice. You know, I think the worst advice was something I kind of convinced myself. It wasn't. I think it was something I try and do things that are safe. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you do things that are safe, you don't take risks, and you don't know if it's the risk. You don't know if it's the right thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I took math, or that's why
Yeah.
I pursued math, because I thought it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, well, I don't really like math, and it didn't make me happy. And I'm so glad I failed, and I'm so glad it took me. I went the long way
Mm-hmm.
to for it to happen, and I wouldn't change it
Yeah.
because I learned so many things on the way. I met great people, and I think it made me stronger.
And
So
and what do you
yeah,
think was like the most difficult moment of your art career, or like the worst moment, and kind of what you learned from that moment?
uh, let's see. The worst moment was, I'm trying to think what the worst moments were. There really wasn't a worst moment. There was a moment of like, you know, when I got laid off from Pixar.
Mm.
It wasn't anything big. I mean, people get laid off, but at the time, I actually thought I was gonna stay at Pixar for a long time. Like I would retire from Pixar. So when that happens, you're like, oh, wow, you know, my whole life plan just changed. And then you always have self doubt, like, oh man, I really messed up, and it really seeps into you, like, wow, maybe you're not a good artist. Maybe this is it. And you know, it just messes with your head.
Yeah.
And so, and not to mention, you know, I had a family, and you know, my daughter had just started school. She loved it up here. So did my wife and I. And it's like, well, what do you do now? And it was a little scary, but then it's kind of like, well, you just keep doing what you always do, and then you just try and find out what you can do with it. So that little moment after Pixar for me was kind of like, well, what's next? I don't
Mm.
know if this is going to work. But then you go through the motions, and you realize there's opportunities out there, you know, and you just have to work at getting out there. You know, when you work for a studio, you work for a studio, you have a job. But when you're freelance, you always have to look for the next thing. So you have to hustle. You have to start calling people. You have to, you know, take advantage of social media. You have to be on people's radar. You have to tell people like, hey, here I am. That's what you have to do. And you just have to, you know, you just have to somehow get their attention. So it made me hungry again, you know, and that what came to be kind of a scary moment became a very happy thing for me. It reminded me of why I got in, because all this time, my whole life when I started this was to work for Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to Pixar, and then when that happened, I was like, what now? And then I just reminded myself, well, why I was doing this, and you know, you just do it for you. Now I'm doing it for me, and you just kind of just, you know, do things for you now. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do my own book. I'm trying to do things and tell my own stories, and I'm trying to do that. That's where I find my passion, or trying to find the thing that pushes you further, you know. Plus, you know, getting a day job is great. I love that, and I miss that, and want that. But now I'm 51, so now I'm at a point in my life where like, well, what do you want to do? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. I want to tell my own stories.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
yeah.
And do you have maybe some like tool or software or something which you bought which simplifies your life?
Not really. I get, Photoshop, but then everybody has kind of Photoshop, or mostly everybody has Photoshop. Um, no, nothing technology or a product that simplifies my life. You know what helps is I go for walks. That's not really a product. That's not something technology. Um, I actually have to disconnect from this. I work here in this room. The thing that really makes me happy is when I just shut it off and I go for a walk.
Hmm.
And it sounds stupid. It sounds like, really?
No.
But when I come back, I feel recharged
Yeah.
and I get energized. And it's that little break of just, smelling the air and, the wind and just kind of being by yourself and walking. There's a Starbucks like about a mile away. So I walk to Starbucks. Big surprise. I always drink Starbucks, but I go and I come back and I feel good again. So it's kind of like that thing where, it's not a product, but that's what I do. And that helps me. That helps me find a little balance.
Yeah. Do you do it every day?
I try to, I try, I try and do it as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not every day, but maybe every other day.
Perfect.
But I need to do it more.
Do you do some other things as well, kind of every day, which contributes to your success, like meditation or?
Oh, I wish I did. No, I don't. I know. I always want to do yoga. I haven't done it. I always wanted to go hiking. I haven't done hiking, and I should because where I live, we live next to a hill or mountain, Diablo Mountain, Mount Diablo, and there's like hiking trails all over the place. They're all over me, but I don't take advantage of it. At least not yet. But I always wanted to go hiking, and I think maybe I should because I know you're a hiker, right? You love hiking.
Sometimes I'm forced to hike by my boyfriend, but otherwise, yes.
You're like, okay, let's go. Yeah,
it's more extreme, like 8-9 hours, so.
Oh my gosh, really? All day?
Yeah. So we take food and go crazy, so.
Oh my god, it's like a trek.
Yeah.
But I bet you it's awesome. I bet you come back. I bet you it's a good tired when you come back, and then you come back with just like the endorphins are working and you feel energized. And yeah,
definitely.
That's what I want to do. I need to start doing that more.
Yeah.
So I need to start exercising. Because I used to be. I was just telling somebody, a friend of mine, where I used to be so athletic and so thin before I started animation, and now all I do is sit in a chair and work, and which is great, but it's like I need to move. So I just I got to start moving more. So
because then maybe it's not good for your back afterwards when we are sitting too long, and
exactly. You start your hunch over. And
so this close to the paper.
I know. It's like I have to wear glasses now because I'm looking at a computer all the time. So it's good. It's good to get away. It's like I try and draw on pencil and paper, old school.
Mm-hmm.
That's always good.
Do you have a favorite pencil?
My pencil. That's my product.
And do you have a favorite pencil, like brand?
I like these woodless pencils. They're I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's the Cretacolor.
Okay.
And these brands are great. There's a brand called Ebony.
Mm-hmm.
They're called layout pencils, but it's called Ebony. And then I like the Stadler pencils. I don't really have one right here. But yeah, they're like the blue ones that you always see.
Yeah.
They come in different grades, like 2H, 2B, 4B. They get darker. I like those because I like to play with those. Yeah.
And do you have like a favorite quote, who kind of you like or you live by?
Favorite quote. I always say, I guess it's all good in the hood. I always say that. But basically, you try not to let things kind of bother you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's only so much things you can do, but you try and do what you can do at the moment. You make the best of it. And, you just kind of just go for it. You just kind of, things are going to happen no matter what, but it's like, you just got to keep moving forward somehow. So, I always say like, oh man, it's all good in the hood. I say it to my friends and my wife and everybody, but, I just kind of like, you just got to just do it. I don't really have I wish I had like one of those nice quotes that you hear from an artist or a philosopher, but I really don't. I just kind of like, just do the best you can.
Yeah.
with what you can. Every day's a new day. If you have a crappy day or a shit day, it's all right. It just ends, and just hopefully tomorrow will be a good day. And you just gotta it's a refresh, it's a reset, and you just try and think on those terms. So
Yeah, and some of my last questions I want to ask you is about the future, and
Mhm.
something like in like 5 to 10 years, if you cannot fail and you are not afraid of anything, what would be your dream scenario?
like can't fail, like nothing goes bad.
Nothing.
I guess my first answer is I'd probably be a gambler, because I could be a blackjack table or somewhere, craps.
And what
I don't
about
know.
art?
Yeah, for art. Well, gosh,
But
if I
or you
can't
can
fail.
be a gambler as well.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, it'd be kind of. I don't know. I would. I guess it would be nice to create studios, like studios in places that never had the opportunity.
Hmm.
You know, um, because I have the good fortune of traveling to the Czech Republic, and I have a good friend in Scotland where they're having challenges trying to get schools or studios there,
Hmm.
and either the powers that be, whether it be like the government, they don't really appreciate what studios can do and what film can do. If I had that power, and the money and the resources, I'd say yes, here, and start creating studios and schools. And it's like, okay, together now I want you guys to tell stories. Tell stories of what's happening in your country. Tell stories that are personal to you. Just tell stories.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be, if I had, if I couldn't fail, which means I'd probably be rich and I had resources, I would do that, because I know it's a good thing. Because stories can do great things. They can entertain, but they can teach, and everybody loves going to the movies, and it's empowering. It's a beautiful thing, and I think everyone, because I'm still one. I'm a student who loves doing this, who wants that opportunity to do something with their art. So I guess that would be my answer. I would probably be I don't know, I guess a studio maker. I don't know, or someone who gives money for studios. That's what I want to do.
Oh, perfect. And what would you like to be remembered for in like 100 years?
What would I be remembered for? I guess I would love to be remembered as I guess as a good person who did their best, who hopefully helped other people be their best as well. I'm being a teacher. I value that, and I'm doing all I can to help. I'm not the master, or I'm not the best at anything. What I'm trying to do is share my experiences, and I so badly know how people want it, because I wanted it and I still want it. So I want to help people be happy and get their dreams. So that's what I want to do. I want to be remembered for, hopefully, pushing people to kind of say it's okay, just do it, just go for it. So
That's perfect. Yeah. And I love it. And before we say goodbye, maybe you can share last piece of advice or like key takeaway.
let's see, takeaways. I say this to students: always be hungry. Try and find something that you're passionate about and just do it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Be fearless. You're going to make mistakes. We're human. It's okay to make mistakes. Just keep drawing through the mistakes. And that's what makes you a stronger artist, because it helps you draw fearlessly. You just, don't be careful. Just go for it. Have the energy and throw it down. Um, if you're working for a studio, this is just common sense, but just be nice. You don't want to be a jerk. Don't be an asshole, because that follows you around. And let the art speak for itself. Be a pro and just try and just do the best you can. Be hungry. Learn something. If you draw characters, great. Learn backgrounds. Once you draw that, good. Do storyboards. Once you do that, good. Start painting. Good. Once you do that, okay, do a short 7-minute story. Good. After you do that, do a 14-minute story. Good. Start doing a feature. You can always build up and learn, and just keep doing it. I'm still learning it. So, it makes you stronger. It keeps you on the hustle. It keeps you hungry. So I tell people, start doing that. Start looking at film. I know people don't have time to look at films, So start looking at scenes. Go to YouTube, look at movies you like and study them. And then turn the sound off and look at them again. And then see what the visuals tell you. What does the lighting tell you? What were the editing choices? Start looking at David Fincher. Start looking at Alfred Hitchcock. Scenes in movies. Study them. And then try and take something out of them. Start looking at a keen eye. Look at observation. Look at, go to the coffee shop. Start drawing. Just start doing it, And it doesn't stop. The learning doesn't stop. At least, from my experience, I still got a lot to learn. So that keeps you moving forward. So that's my go-away. It's like, you just got to keep doing it. Don't wait for Pixar to tell you to do it. Don't wait for Sony or DreamWorks. People say like, oh, when I get to here, I'll do this. Don't wait for that. Just do it now. And, there's a thing I said, just be your own Pixar. It could be whatever studio you want. Be whatever you think is the best it is. Just do it. And just do it now.
Perfect.
So that's it.
I love it. Amazing. So thank you again so much for being here. And so it was so great.
No, thank you. But thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully I didn't banter or just kind of blah, blah, blah all the time. I kind of no. do that. But thank you for letting me at least share my experiences and my story. And I hope others enjoyed it, and hopefully they can start, sharing theirs as well.
Yeah, so don't forget to inspire each other, guys, and thank you so much for joining, and see you next time.
Cool, thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos, because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.